I'm so excited to see you guys. Hello and welcome to Crystal Masters. Can you see me? Welcome, 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 everybody. I'm just watching you till you can see me. Aw. Hi, everybody. Can you see me? Welcome into Crystal Masters. Aw, can you see me? I can see you. Ah, good. I want to welcome Erin Bowman. And there were quite a few of you who I think said you were new. So I'm just watching the comments. I want to tell you how happy I am to see you. I had to set up an entirely new computer. I'm totally blaming Barbara. I mean, I didn't touch the computer. We went to turn it on today, and it didn't work. So I had to completely, practically rebuild a new computer on the fly and then have to have the other one repaired. So I apologize for the delay. I don't like to be delayed. I've been sitting here like a little kid just waiting to see you. So welcome in. So if you're new, or even if you're not, welcome to Crystal Masters for October, where our focus tonight is sacred geometry. It's usually not cluttered in here. There's a lot behind me because we did our live gem sale in this room last night, which is how I don't know how the computer was broken today because we just used it last night. But anyway, it's Mercury retrograde. Hi, Mercury. I totally blame Barbara. Nick is the one who fixed my computer. It's really true. My 13-year-old is quite gifted. It's good to see you too. Okay, so tonight's conversation is all sacred geometry. I'm going to flip the camera. Please tell me if the audio is weird when I flip the camera. It shouldn't be. We tested it, but if you don't like it, I won't do it. But I do like to use the other camera to show you everything on my tray of tricks here. So I've got your Crystal Masters tool for the month of October sitting in front. I brought, for those of us, I'm somewhat visually impaired. So for teaching purposes, I might play with my big toys today, just because it might be a little easier for visual purposes. Does it sound okay? Oh, good, phew, okay. So we're going to be talking about sacred geometry today. I do want to tell you, if you want to do everything I'm doing with you tonight, you need to have a pendulum. Because I'm actually going to teach you how to use the Platonic solids. It's what you have in your set is called the solids plus 2. Do you know this? So the Platonic solids, there's 5, and I'm going to teach you everything I know about the history of this. Which is more than I've found anywhere else. And what's interesting is my dad actually had a lot of insight about Pythagoras and Plato and the development of the theories around the solids. So some of what I'm teaching you tonight came straight from my my lineage. My dad is very proud of our Greek heritage, and he fashions himself something of a philosopher. I think he is too. So anyway, I will take you all the way back to the roots. But if you do have a pendulum, I'd really love to encourage you to have it with you. And that way you'll be able to do the elemental assessment that we're going to do tonight. Do you remember when I was teaching you the chakras and we used our pendulum to assess the frequency and the health of our chakras? Which I know a lot of you have gone on to use that as a methodology and a modality with your own clients, which I think is great because it is accurate. And it gives you a quick hit on which chakra you need to focus on when you're doing your healing work. Well, tonight we're going to do the same exercise but with the Platonic solids. And what's really cool about tonight is too, this is another distance healing technique, what I'm going to teach you tonight. So this is a technique that you can do whether the person that you're doing healing for is sitting in the room right in front of you or whether they are literally across the planet. So if you don't have a set of Platonic solids, what I would say is hang tonight and enjoy the experience, and then I would recommend that you get one. I don't know if we have any, so it may be that you're going to be shopping on a different website. But there are places online you could get a set of the Platonic solids. We will try to get some in for you as well. It's been really hard to get the Platonic solids, which is why normally on a class night I would have the set available for you in some other stone form. Basically every carver that we've worked with this year has either had COVID or not been able to carve because of COVID. So it is really diminished the amount of crystals that we have to work with because they aren't able to do the work. Fortunately, your tools were started on before the pandemic, which is how we even got them in the first place. So I love it. So grab your pendulum, grab your sacred geometric shapes if you have them. If you have one of the Merkabas that we've offered in the past, if you have a sphere, if you have a cube, you already have some of the platonic solids, right? So some of you might be thinking, I don't have any of the solids. Then you look at your collection and you're like, I do have a cube. I do have a sphere. I do have a pyramid, right? So right there you have the tetrahedron, the hexahedron, the sphere, and you might even have a Merkaba in your collection. So take a second look is what I would say, because you probably have more sacred geometry in your crystal collection than you even give yourself credit for. And it's kind of fun to rediscover your tools. Melissa, that's beautiful. Would you mind posting that in our Facebook group? Because she's just recommending a book that she loves called Hands of Light. And in Soul Shift, actually, I taught a focus on the hands. I taught it in Crystal Masters too, but I taught a deeper dive on palmistry. So I'm not sure what the book is about, but our community is always looking to expand their library. Everybody's always asking for book recommendations. So if you wouldn't mind posting a link to that book in our Facebook group, I know I would appreciate it. And there are other people building their libraries right now too who would probably also really love to read it. So that's right. So Lauren's got a sphere and a Merkaba. I mean, she's good to go. And then you can pick up the rest of the pieces as you go, if you don't have a set already. Is that cool? So, enjoy the teaching. And then, no way, Janine Gibbons' mom has the same book. It must be good. Whenever I hear that 2 people in the group have the same book, then I'm like, okay. And Donna has it too. Okay, great. Hannah loves it too. So please give us the recommendation. I haven't read it, so, and I'm a voracious reader. I usually read about 3 or 4 books a month. Right now I'm not reading anything that you would be interested in, I don't think. And actually 2 of the books I'm reading right now are poetry books, because I really want to get back into reading to my community, which I primarily do in Soul Shift. But I really love reading poetry as part of classes and ceremonies and rituals. And I was realizing, I haven't really read poetry in a while. So I have 2 books of poetry that I'm reading. I have another book that I'm reading because a friend of mine says I have to. It's called On Tyranny. That's not fun. And then I'm reading what are the other 2 books? I'm trying to remember. I've been in the poetry books for the last 4 or 5 days. So anyway, very cool. Love it. Look at that. She's written 3 books. So now we're learning about a new author we all have to know about. And I really appreciate that. Okay. So I am going to ring my bell. Session 2 of October is in motion. Class has begun. And I love that. Remember, whenever you post a suggestion, it helps so many people. It really, really does. So if you ever hesitate, like, I don't know if I should mention that, if you feel like you should, you probably should, because there's probably somebody in the group who needs it. Oh, that's fantastic. So Joan is ready to go. I'm happy that you're here too. Oh, thank you for that, Millie. She says Louise Gluck, an amazing poet, just won the Nobel Prize for Literature. I didn't realize that she did. I know who she is. I didn't realize she won the Nobel Prize. That's a huge deal. I love poetry. It transports me. I write a lot of poetry too. I posted a poem on my personal page today. It just helps me process. It's one of my favorite forms of writing and reading. So I want to encourage you to roll your shoulders back, let all of the energy move, beginning at your root chakra, your connection to the earth if you're sitting down, right at the base of your tailbone. Start to become more aware of your root, and then letting the energy wind its way up that central column till it reaches your crown, and then letting it rise out of your body, out of your physical energy centers and your central column, and letting it move past your physical form. And then while you're doing that, it's really nice to imagine your root chakra basically becoming like the trunk of a tree and burrowing its roots down into the center of the earth while you sit up nice and straight and really imagine a thread pulling you skyward too, something extending the energy line above your head and sort of pulling you a little bit leaner and taller. And again, feeling the anchor below you, feeling the extension above you, and noticing how the energy flows better when your posture shifts. So a lot of us find ourselves at the end of the day like, energy can't move that way. It's like trying to push energy through a bent pipe. It doesn't really work. So really pulling your central column up, sitting, rolling your shoulders back, taking a nice deep breath in through that diaphragm and really releasing all that energy and air is so important. It's funny that Amy says she's burning copal, because if you're in Soul Shift, we did our readings today, and the whole room smelled like copal, and I haven't burned copal in this room. I've burned it downstairs, but I haven't burned copal in this room in like 3 weeks. It was really weird. Okay, do you guys have any questions before we get started? Would love to know if there's anything, that's on your mind. And yeah, and just noticing your posture. One of the things I have learned from belly dancing, as I've been belly dancing for in earnest for the last, I would say, 5 years, but I took lessons when I was really, really young, so I've kind of always belly danced. What I've learned from belly dancers and yoga instructors is the importance of posture. Belly dance is nothing if not just a constant awareness of your posture. And when you watch a belly dancer walk into a room, you straighten your spine too, because they don't walk in, they glide in. And part of that glide is their entire spine is lengthened, and it gives them height, it gives them strength, but it also is beautiful to watch. So notice your posture energetically, it's really important. Yeah. Karen, I gave you a quick response in our live today, so you might want to go back and watch that, our live from Main Page today. I think that's where I gave you a thought about that. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to tell you before we get started, because I forgot, but I made myself a note. Just this afternoon, I got a shipment in from India, so I'm telling you first. If you don't want it, don't get it, but by tomorrow, everybody else will have seen it. But it just went live on the website about, I think, 45 minutes ago, which is Hessonite Garnet. Hessonite Garnet is the Indian stone of wealth. It's an orange kind of cinnamon color garnet that comes exclusively from India, where they know it as the Gomed. And if you work with a piece that is 2 carats or larger, it is thought to bring you great wealth and prosperity. So I have 2 different size pieces. I think they're like $3 and $5 or $4 and $6. Don't go now, but when we're done with class tonight, you may want to get a Hessonite Garnet. I've only had it in the shop 2 or 3 times before. I ordered this myself directly from India, and it just got here. So if you're interested in Hessonite Garnet, when I found it, I screamed a little bit because we haven't had it in a while, and that's a good one for your abundance, altar or your healing tray. Alexis loves it too. It's a different kind of garnet. It looks like spessartine a little bit, but it's African, and it, yeah, so don't go away now, but that'll be there for you later. Okay, so I'm going to dive right in and begin. And I'm going to start tonight's conversation with a video that I pulled up for you. It's so funny, you guys are already looking at it. You're right on top of that. I normally don't show you videos, but this one is a really cool... Now, 2 carats or more. The pieces that are on the website are, I think, 4 carats and 6 carat pieces, so you're safe. You just don't want a little teeny piece. It has to be at least 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch to have the prosperity energy. You're fine. Okay, so I'm going to show you a video from YouTube, and I'll put the link in our group if you want to watch it again. It is kind of a fun one, but I think you'll get it the first time, so I don't think you're going to need to see it again. But what's cool about the video is it shows you the platonic solids inside of Metatron's cube. And I'm a visual learner. It's very hard for me sometimes to learn if somebody's just talking to me without a visual, which is why I like to make worksheets and handouts and memes, because I learn better that way. So if you're a visual learner too, I think this will really help you visualize what's going on with the platonic solids. So here we go. I'll wait till the ads are done, because there's always ads. Weird music. It's like intellectual porn music. Is that a thing? Yeah, Alexis is taking notes, so you don't have to worry about a thing. You just get to sit back and relax and enjoy the process tonight. So, was that helpful as a visual? And part of what Annette was dancing, Annette's like, did a nice drum beat to that, nice drum line. What it helps to illustrate for you is that inside of the Metatron's cube, I meant to wear my Metatron's cube tonight, but it's funny, whenever I wear a necklace that isn't these 5, the process of taking these off takes me like 10 minutes because I'm so careful with them. I don't want to drop them or lose them or tangle them. And so it's a huge kind of pain in the butt to put on a different necklace if you ever wonder why I pretty much just always wear these and nothing else. So, but I do a huge, beautiful Metatron's cube that Sylvia Peluso made for me. She has them always in her shop if you're ever interested. It's incredible because she hand cuts the metal into Metatron's cube. Anyway, just but to illustrate for you, so one of the reasons that the Metatron's cube is so important to those of us who work with these shapes for energy work is that it contains every other sacred geometric shape. The word we use is it subsumes. So it includes all of the other geometries. Does that make sense? It is the ultimate. Yeah, I never take my necklaces off, but all of my necklaces are gold. Either 14 or 18 karat gold. So I never take my necklaces off. And I never take my thumb rings off. Those are the things that don't ever come off. Yeah, it's a pain in the butt. And if I take one of the necklaces off, they all tangle. But if I leave all 5 of them on, they never do. Like when I wake up in the morning, they look just like this. When I go to bed at night, they look just like this. But if I take one necklace off, the whole thing turns into a ball of chains I can't untangle. Isn't that funny? It's true. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history about my introduction to sacred geometry, and then we'll kind of take it from there. And if you have questions, I'll try to check in the feed for questions. I'm also going to leave time at the end for questions too, because I love answering your questions. I think your questions lead us to some of the best conversations that we have. So please don't hesitate. And like I said, if I miss something because I'm focusing on you up here, just know I'll come back to it. So my journey with sacred geometry began in geometry in high school. It was actually one of the only math classes I really loved was geometry. And when I went to community college, which is a long story, but my family's business burned down when I was 17, the night before the SAT, in fact. So I ended up not being able to take the SAT, and so I ended up not going away to college like I was supposed to. My parents needed help, so I stayed here. And anyway, so long story short, I went to community college. And at community college, I had a powerhouse math professor. I mean, to this day, she goes down in history as being one of the best teachers I ever had in my whole life. And she brought geometry to life. And I remember, I've always been kind of magically oriented. So even at 19 years old when I was taking her class, or 18 years old, I had already been studying magic because I really started to get into this when I was about 14 or 15. And so by then I was already reading all of the books. But I hadn't really explored sacred geometry yet. And I remember being in class and looking up at her and listening to her one day, and she started talking about nature and how all of these shapes are in nature. They're in every leaf, in every flower, they're in your body, they're in your cells. These are the building blocks of life, these symbols. And they all have different energies to them, different angles. Now, all of the sacred geometric shapes that we're talking about tonight, known as the Platonic solids, are called polygons. And these are all symbols and shapes. Polyhedron is the technical name. What it means is, and I want to give you the technical definition of a polyhedron. The sides, the edges, the corners, including the length of them and the degrees of them, are all the same. That's one of the hallmarks of sacred geometry. There is really divine and profound symmetry. And one of the reasons I wanted to show you that video is I think it brings that symmetry and that balance to life. And after that class with her, I never looked at symbols and shapes the same way. And I went on in my undergraduate career to get a bachelor's degree in comparative literature. And one of the classes I took, which we were talking about this yesterday, was a class called Symbology. And it was a whole quarter-long class where we focused on sacred symbols from all different kinds of civilizations and cultures. And one of the things, if you study symbolism, and there are some really cool symbolic encyclopedias that you can get on Amazon. If any of this interests you, The study of symbology is fascinating. I have several symbolic encyclopedias. So if you ever see a symbol in a dream or a symbol in a journey and you're like, I don't know what that symbol means, it's nice to have those encyclopedias because you can look them up. Now, I mean, these days we have Google, so you can always do that too. So then I started studying symbolism more generally. And I started again, when I took that symbology class, I remember thinking back and thinking, this is geometry. You know what I mean? Like this flower of life and all of these sigils and all of these, you know, these cylindrical or these cylinder seal stamps from Mesopotamia and all the stuff that I was studying with this symbology and all the alchemical symbols, they all had sacred geometry at their core. So it really brought me back to, okay, there's something going on here. Then when I started to study Wicca, when I was about 17, until I was 19 years old, when I joined Coven and was really doing this intensive Wicca training program, we started studying symbols again. And that's when I got introduced for the first time to the idea of the Platonic solids. Now, in Wicca, the focus of the Platonic solids is on the elements. When I was taught them as part of what we called there the elemental profiles. And so it's these symbols that we're going to talk about tonight are one way of symbolically representing the elements, earth, air, fire, water, and ether or spirit. In your set, you have 7 symbols, you'll notice. So in your set, you have the 5 Platonic solids plus 2. And the plus 2 are the sphere and the Merkaba, which are also considered to be sacred geometric shapes, but they're not on the list of what Pythagoras and Plato identified as the Platonic solids. Is this all making sense so far? Are you with me? There are times tonight where it'll get a little bit dense, and then there's times tonight where it's going to be easier. This is some of the dense. Then when we get into the practical aspects of this, it won't be so dense. But if you have any questions, please do let me know. Google's a great source of information as long as you have the gift of discernment. Not everything that everybody writes is true. Do you know what I mean? So you have to, when you're Googling things and watching things on YouTube, I think you always have to run them through the filter of, is this true? Is this accurate? You know what I mean? Does this resonate with what I understand to be true? Oh my gosh, I love that, Millie. What divine timing too that you found it. Okay. Yeah, you should have 7 in your set, I believe. Am I the only one who has 7? You should have the basic 5, the Platonic 5. Yeah, you should have 7 in your set. And because traditionally it's a set of 5, but we wanted to give you the whole shebang. So we added the Merkaba and the sphere, which is technically the complete set. So, yeah. Okay, cool. I'm glad you're following. Everybody else has 7? Okay, good. So technically, Lena Lockhart, there are 148, depending on where you look. Some people say 48, some people say 148 Platonic solids. I think 48 is the safer bet. So, and that, what does that basically mean? I mean, that there are 48 polyhedrons, right? There are 48 shapes and symbols in the universe that we can identify that have equilateral lines and degrees. The reason we're studying the 7 tonight, and I'm really going to focus on the 5. You got 7 because, and if you're missing one, all you have to do is let Kevin know, and we'll, I don't know how that happened, but we'll sort it for you. Maybe it fell out in your bag or something. We'll figure it out for you. Anyway, don't worry about it right now. We're really going to be focusing on the 5 tonight, and the reason is we're working with Plato tonight. Now, I'm going to tell you my version of how sacred geometry was built, because I know you guys very well. And I know that one of the first questions you're going to ask me is, who the hell decided that a tetrahedron is fire? If you guys didn't ask me that, I would wonder if you're paying attention. Because I would ask that. I'd be like, Okay, but who the hell decided that this is fire? And so I have a theory, because the reality is I've gone back to all of the original texts, and my dad has read them in Greek. So I trust him, I trust my interpretation when we've had these conversations. What you have to know is Pythagoras is the father of this, not Plato. Pythagoras, and I'm sure in math you've heard of the Pythagorean theorem, right? So Pythagoras is famous as an ancient Greek mathematician. I mean, he's really the father of modern mathematics, and most people credit him that way. So what Plato did was bring that dialogue forward. Plato was a philosopher and an orator and a recorder of history, if you think about it. And that's really what philosophy is. And so Plato brought Pythagoras's theories of these Platonic solids forward in his writings. And the document where they are written about is called the Timaeus. Timaeus is also the name of an Italian writer-philosopher who was alive in the same era as Plato. Plato was quite fond of Timaeus. They did work together, and so there came forward these Timaean dialogues. Basically what it was is kind of the modern version of an interview. Okay, so Plato would encounter these philosophers. This particular one was in the south of Italy, and he would find these philosophers doing interesting work. How they found each other, who knows, right? I mean, we didn't have a phone, we didn't have internet. I guess they were writing letters back and forth. And so the Timaean dialogues are Plato's dialogues with Timaeus. Timaeus was a student of Pythagoras. You starting to put the pieces together? Okay, so now Plato was obsessed with, and so I'm taking you back into history for just a second, if that's okay, because if you're new to Crystal Masters, we are going to talk about crystals tonight, but for me, I have to root it for you in science and history, for you to really understand how and why we work with these things today. So I could just put these up here and do the healing exercise with you and send you on your way. But then if anybody ever asked you, so what are the Platonic solids and why are they called that? And is there something behind it? Like, was there a person? What was the theory? Why would they spend so much time? Why only these 5? You know what I mean? Like, I want you to have good answers to those questions as part of your training in this program. Okay, so Plato generally as a philosopher, and I don't know if you've ever read any of Plato's dialogues or anything that he wrote. Plato has beautiful quotes that people share around, and it's funny, I saw one attributed to somebody else recently, and I was like, nope, that was Plato. Don't do that. Don't take a quote from Plato. That's awesome. So anyway, so he was obsessed with this idea of perfection. Okay? Plato's philosophy was this, his kind of underlying philosophy about life and learning and all of that. Because remember, he was the original philosopher. Plato and Socrates, right, are the fathers of modern day philosophy. And so what Plato believed was, in order to understand something, and in order, frankly, to do anything, whether it's cook a meal or learn a language or even do your makeup. I mean, I even think of this in very practical terms. What Plato would say is, you have to know what the ideal is. You have to figure out what is the perfect form of this meal. What is the perfect form of this room if I'm designing it? Right now I'm designing Sage Goddess's new building. What is the perfect form of that? He called it the ideal. And he was criticized by many people at the time because it was like, well, not everything's perfect, and why do we have to focus on a perfection or an ideal? And, one person's perfection is somebody else's this, that, and the other, just like it would be today. If I went on Facebook Live right now in front of our 1 million people at Sage Goddess and said, I am only going to study perfection, I think that people would throw virtual tomatoes at me. They'd be like, well, what's perfection, and how do you know, and all of that. But it's actually very interesting because Lorian's getting at it, okay? What Plato meant by perfection, by the ideal, is actually balance and symmetry. And what he argued, okay? And I'm serious with makeup, right? Like, what he argued is, if I'm going to sit down let's say I decided to do a totally different look. I wear the same makeup every day. I'm sure it's boring to look at, but it's what I know, and it takes me 10 minutes, and it's just what I do. One day when my kids are out of the house, I probably will be more adventurous and do something that takes more than 10 minutes. But for now, I can't. So, but let's say I wanted to do a whole new look. I would work with Amy Arabia, who's our resident magician makeup artist. She's one of your classmates, and she's one of the best makeup artists I know. I would go to Amy and go, let's come up with a new look, right? And then Amy would probably draw a picture, or I don't know, she would give me a palette, right? Which would be the ideal. And so what Play-Doh would say is, if you don't know what you're trying to create, you'll never build it. If Amy doesn't give you a look, she can give you the palette, she can give you the brush, she can give you the eyeliner, she can give you everything else, but her version of what it's supposed to look like and your version of what it's supposed to look like could be very different, right? So Plato's theory was, you have to have an ideal. Now, the ideal is, and the reason the golden mean is relevant to this, or the golden ratio, or the Fibonacci sequence, the reason all of this is relevant to this is that is a form of the ideal, right? That is a mathematically precise equation, okay? So if I tell you that a fern grows in accordance with the Fibonacci sequence, according to the golden mean, right? Which is true. That's how a fern unfurls its leaves, exactly according to that mathematically precise equation. Then you know how that fern's going to grow. That will help you know where to plant it, how it's going to absorb the light, right? What kind of growing conditions to give it. You know how to take care of a plant because you know how it grows, and you know how it grows because you know the ideal. Does that make sense? So that's why whenever I design anything, whether it's a ring for Sage Goddess or a room in a building like I'm doing right now, I have it all mapped out. I have the ideal. And then I give that to architects and designers and stuff, and I go, this is what it needs to look like. And then they know how to go and get the individual, okay, we need this floor and this paint and that countertop and this, ceiling and all of that, because I've given the ideal. Why does this matter to us? I want you to think about tonight, I hope. My classes usually have more to them than meets the eye. Tonight's class is partly about you figuring out what the ideal is. Your DNA is your body's ideal. It has given your cells a blueprint, right, of exactly how to do you, how to be you, how to evolve into you. Your astrological chart, I see as an ideal. This is the ideal of how your life will unfold, what your priorities will be important to you that may not be important to me because you and I have a different ideal. Which is why it's ridiculous, to hold yourself up to anybody else and compare. It's very possible that your ideal and my ideal are very different. They could be exactly the same. Right? It's the map. That's exactly right. And you need the seed. Yes, Scarlett, you guys are so on top of it, and you're saying it more articulately than I even can. You have to have the seed of what you want, to Scarlett's point. And then the rest of it will grow from there. There's a principle in quantum physics that I'm sure you're aware of, right? Where the part is in the whole, and the whole is in the part, right? And so as long as you have one kernel of the energy, you have the whole thing. This is why I tell people are like, well, I don't know how to manifest wealth. I mean, I don't have any money. And I'm like, if you have $1, you can manifest wealth. Then you have the part, and now you just need the whole. The money that you want, let's say you want $1 million, is already in that dollar, because that dollar is in that million. I mean, this is particle physics, right? So it's like, in what I do in big energy work, what we do is we play with these principles, and then we try to attach them and translate them into more technical aspects of our lives, right? So as long as you have a small amount of what you want, a little bit of healing, a little bit of relief from your pain, $1, you have the part, and as long as you have the part, you can make the whole. But you have to be able to imagine the whole in order to get from the part to the whole. Does that make sense? So as long as you have one little kernel of it, then you can magnify that and make it the rest of the way. It all begins with that one kernel, that one tiny piece of information. Yeah. Okay, so this is Plato. So Plato was obsessed with the ideal, and that is the phrase that he used to describe this, what I would call a schema, right? So as long as if you can imagine it, you can create it. And in fact, if you can't imagine it, you can't manifest it. That's why it's so important to travel and see the world and explore architecture and learn about different kinds of occupations, because like I'm obsessed with exposing my kids to the world and to different types of people and to different languages and different types of music, because if you never experience something, you can't expand into it. A fish only grows as big as its bowl, right? So it's like you have to continually expand your horizons in order to understand some new ideals, because that will take whatever your idea is and allow you to expand it, right? Okay, so let me go back to my notes just to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, no, that was everything I wanted to cover. So once you have the part and you can visualize and you can imagine it as the whole. So once you have, a table, you can now imagine building out the rest of your house, right? And from there, it is about aligning to the vibration of what you're trying to create. And that is the hardest part of magic. And the reason that's the hardest part of magic is it's the only part of magic that really takes sustained commitment. So much of magic is instantaneous, right? You can get an inspiration or come up with a thought form, or, something will come to you, or you'll download, you'll channel something. But then you have to align to the frequency, and you have to hold that frequency while the universe moves all the chess pieces around. And what 99% of people do is they get all excited, they get inspired, they come up with the ideal form, they align to the frequency, and then a day later they're like, I don't know, that's hard. It's going to take longer than I thought. It's too expensive. Yeah, you know what, my husband's right. It's not practical. And then one by one, they unwind themselves from the ideal. And then they start negotiating. Well, maybe I'll do part of it, but not all of it. Or maybe I'll do it next year. Maybe somebody else will do it. Maybe I'm not meant to. You know what, I'm not good enough. That's not my skill, right? This is exactly what we're talking about, right? So it's entrainment, to use the word that Danielle is working. It's how do you align to that frequency? In Asian cultures, one of the things that they do around prosperity, which I think is really interesting, and my friend and I who were talking about it, my friend thinks it's like the weirdest, dumbest thing ever. But she's just a very practical person. She was like, I just think that's really dumb. And I'm like, well, but energetically it kind of makes sense. So one of the practices is they will go to, if you're trying to manifest wealth, they will go to a wealthy person's house and they will take soil from the earth on that property, hopefully with permission, and then work with it, hold it, connect to it, bring it into their house, put a little bit into their yard, and mix it in, mulch it in with their soil. Because the idea is, that is entrainment, right? That's a very physical example of what entrainment means, but it's literally aligning yourself with a frequency that is vibrationally similar to what you are trying to create or manifest. Now, I like to work, when I'm in training, right, I like to work with things that hold a frequency. On Friday night, I'm going to be teaching you about moon water, and we're going to start making moon water. For a long time, I thought making moon water was kind of lame. But recently, I've been working more and more with water for manifestation, because water can be used to entrain. Water holds a frequency. So I've been working on healing, physical healing. One of my teachers introduced me to it. Doing vibrational work with your water before you drink it. And doing that, keeping that water in a lunar cycle. So I'm going to be sharing some of that with you on Friday. But so you can do this with water. You can do it with crystals. Crystals, especially quartz, right? Quartz is the most programmable mineral in your collection. It aligns to frequencies, it entrains to frequencies, and it magnifies and transmits frequencies. And quartz is quite accurate, which is why it's used in timepieces, right? So Isn't that interesting? Amy says, I take wilted orchids from my wealthy clients. Seriously, this is a practice. This is something that's done in that particular culture. So, but like I said, but you'll get creative. If these are just some techniques and some suggestions, I bet you have other ideas about how to entrain too. And I bet you're already doing it to a certain extent, right? I mean, growing up, I always thought the concept of a role model was really accurate. I always loved that concept, or like somebody that you aspire to become, because it gives you the ideal. Think about it. It gives you a schema. So if you say, oh, I want to dance like her, or I want to, I tell this story all the time, but I have an older friend, and I just think she's so elegant and beautiful. She's everything I want to be 20 years from now. Like, I literally hold her up as like, if I'm anything like her, just so wise and calm and graceful and beautiful and strong and healthy, but not trying to be, something she's not. Like, she's aged gracefully and beautiful. Like, I just hold her up as a role model. I actually really like the idea of role models. And I like the idea that in your healing practice, and you can do this with your clients too, it kind of gives them something to aspire to. It gives them a frequency to connect with, right? And you don't have to know that person. You don't have to be connected to that person. As long as energetically they bring you some sort of inspiration, I think they're probably the perfect candidate for it. And then you can start to connect with their energy and see if you can entrain to that frequency, whatever that frequency is. And ask yourself, one of the ways to do this is to journal. When I think about this person, I feel this way. You know what I mean? I want to feel more like that. I want to feel more graceful. I want to feel more aligned. I want to feel more peaceful. I want to feel more joyful, or whatever it is. And, oh, you guys are so sweet. You guys are role models to me too. I mean, I really do. I watch how you navigate really challenging circumstances, and I think, I want to do it like that, and it's really, really true. Like, I've been, watching MJ in our group who had surgery, and I just like watching her so gracefully move through something so challenging. My mom had a very similar procedure and was not as graceful, really struggled and suffered. And it's just like, I watch her and I think of her as like a swan moving through that. Now, that's probably not how she's experiencing it, but I look up to her. You know what I mean? It's funny. I love Dominique Saksa too. Wida mentioned her. She's a newscaster in Texas, and I watch her videos on YouTube sometimes because I just think she's beautiful and funny and real. And so, thanks, you guys. I really appreciate that. I'm honored to be your mentor. I really am. Well, thank you. So anyway, I watch you. I get inspired by you too. I really take your work and your strength to heart. And so in so many different ways and times and places, you inspire me too. Really, truly. Okay. So, I think I said everything I wanted to say. Oh, no, the most important part. So how the heck did they line up these shapes with the elements? I'm going to tell you this story, and then I will flip the camera and actually focus on the shapes themselves. I could sit here all night and talk to you about this, but that really isn't why you're here. But I hope that this part of the conversation has been helpful for you, because underneath any crystal healing is energy work. It's never just about the crystals. That's why I'm always telling people, like, it worries me when people just come and buy a crystal and then go away. It's like, it's not just about the rock, right? It's about the energy of the rock, what you do with the rock, what you understand about the rock. There's a whole, that's why we do this work together. Difference metaphysically between 3-sided and 4-sided pyramids. So different from the tetrahedron. Do you mean like the ones that I had carved that are in the shop today, the 6-sided pyramids? Technically, all we're talking about tonight energetically with the elements are these specific shapes, which would be a 3-sided pyramid with a base. So when you add on additional sides outside of that, it's no longer a polyhedron, meaning An additional side on your triangle can throw off the balance of the length of the lines and the degrees and the angles. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean they're not magical. It means they're not equilateral. And that is one of the definitions of a polyhedron. Yeah. That's exactly right. Okay, good. Okay, so here's what I understand happened. Pythagoras had found wormwood, and may also have had access to fermented hops. Why does that matter? How many of you have been in an altered state and seen sacred geometry? Just like show of hands by way of comment. When you do a hallucinogenic substance, whether that's mushrooms or LSD or ayahuasca or San Pedro or whatever it is for you, when you do those substances, at least when I do them, it's the first thing you see. Every single time I've ever done ayahuasca, for example, if my eyes are open, the whole ceiling turns into a flower of life that's vibrating immediately. I mean, it's how I know I'm in. Okay, so you can see from the feed. And I'm not encouraging psychedelic work. It's hard and not for everybody. So this is not a psychedelic commercial in any way, shape, or form. I think if you're meant to do those things will find you. But they're an important part of my practice and training. And the minute, and literally for me, it's how I know I'm in. I literally will say out loud, okay, I'm in, because like the whole ceiling turns into it. When I had my computer open here, did you see the tree that was in the screen? It was kind of reflecting my tree back at you. That whole tree turns into a flower of life instantly as soon as I work with ayahuasca, because I always do ayahuasca in this room, in fact, right where I'm sitting, and I always look out at that tree and the whole thing turns into a flower of life. Yeah, do not do this at home. I mean, you can, but not at my suggestion. Once you've seen it in plant ceremony, then you start to see it without plant ceremony. So now, if I'm tired, that time right before you fall asleep, if I'm tired enough and I look out at this tree, it starts to turn. It moves into a circle pattern, and then it becomes the flower of life and vibrates. Yeah, so that's that tree. That tree is a magic tree. It usually has like 10 or 15 hummingbirds in it at once, and I think it's because it holds so much energy. Is it like tripping? I guess so. But for me, the plants that I mentioned are all teachers. I think of ayahuasca and mushrooms in particular as being really powerful plant teachers. And so for me, when the geometry comes, it's a signal that I've left this dimension and I'm entering a different dimension. Because you can only see the sacred geometric shapes with your eyes outside of 3D. You have to be in the fourth dimension or above to have a visual on it. So it's one of the really strong hints that you're starting to not just think interdimensionally and multidimensionally, but you're starting to live interdimensionally and multidimensionally. Does that make sense? Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm not surprised at all, Linda, about your son. She said, my son sees everything in shapes and numbers, but after his accident in college, once he woke back up, came back as himself, he says that now the shapes are always visible. I have no doubt that he probably had a very close near-death experience, and that was enough to get him out of 3D. And so now that he's back in 3D, that's an example of how, and what a radical, awesome example that is, of how you can have this experience without psychedelics. And I think in my lifetime, there will be a different relationship to psychedelics. I mean, I've always said this. I've always hoped in my retirement that I could be a doula for people as they go through plant ceremony, but I wouldn't want to do that unless it was legal. So things will have to change a little bit for that to happen. Yeah. That's why plant, for me, things like this are only good when they're taken in ceremony and with someone who's trained and where they've grown their own. Like my shaman goes and grows his own plants and, you know, and makes his own tea and stuff. It has to be some done in a very sacred way, or it's, you know, not very helpful. You know what I mean? It's a different experience. Okay, so Pythagoras had access to psychedelics. This is where I'm going with this. And it is said that these shapes spoke to him and told him what elements they were aligned to. So the scientist in me, where I'm always like, I don't believe it. I think somebody just said, oh, a triangle, fire. Like it's some random thing. I don't think so. I don't think it's random at all. I think it's true. I think he was having a psychedelic experience, and I think he ended up getting a download or a channel. Isn't that fun? Yep, I think so too. I'm going back up in the feed really quick. I'll be right back with you. Yeah, so let me know. I'm not seeing any active questions right now, but if there are, let me know. Okay. So the story as it goes is that Pythagoras had these visions, and what we know about Plato is that Plato actually walked the sacred way, the same ceremony that we did with Demeter, where they would take you into the cave and have the visions in the underworld, you know, as your journey to the underworld. We know that Plato and Socrates both walked that long path from Athens to Elysium, and we know that they both worked with the fermented hops in the cave, doing the actual sacred way journey. So we know they had access to psychedelics because the tea that was given, both on the way to the cave and when they were in the cave, was psychoactive. Isn't that cool? That's right. So this is what they don't teach you in math. And I will tell you something. If my math teacher, freshman year of high school, had said, listen, I know you're not into this, because I wasn't. I know you're not into this, but guess what? Pythagoras was really cool, and he saw some things. And then he did math, and he made up math. And math is magic. So maybe you should pay better attention. Maybe it's not as hard and boring as you think it is. I would have been like, excuse me, now I'm in. I have not seen Joe Rogan on the Eleusinian rites. I taught the Eleusinian rites, and we did a journey, Dawn, in Soul Shift. Was it 2 months ago now? Seems like it was a year ago. Because you know, I'm Greek by on my father's side, and so that's my lineage, and I've always been really connected to it. And I've always wanted to do an actual physical retreat at the temple to Demeter there, and I still think I will at some point once the world is in a different situation. The allegory of the cave is different. That's still Plato, but it's different from the cave leading to the underworld and the Eleusinian mysteries. Yeah, I would have been into it, I'm telling you. It would have been a different experience. So I'm going to switch my cameras, and I'm going to now talk to you about the specific shapes that we are working with tonight. And then we're going to do an exercise with them. Okay. So we're going to go through all of them right now. So, and like I said, Alexis will, I'm just making this a quick note to myself. Alexis will be taking notes. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start with the tetrahedron. In your set, and by the way, your set is made of Picasso jasper. Picasso jasper, most of the Picasso jasper in the world comes from Utah. This is not that. Our Picasso jasper comes from India. I've been working with Picasso jasper for about 10 years now, is when I discovered it myself for the first time. It's older than that, but to me it was new 10 years ago. And it's actually, interestingly enough, it's not technically a jasper. The name jasper is sometimes given to stones that are a blend of chalcedony with crystalline quartz, microcrystalline quartz formations. And that's what this is. This is limestone and chalcedony with microcrystalline quartz. Because there's chalcedony with microcrystalline quartz in the matrix, it qualifies it as a jasper. And so it gets lumped into the jasper pile. But what I have always worked with Picasso jasper for, and the way I was taught about Picasso jasper, is that it is technically a stone of grief and mourning. But not of the sorrow kind. It's a stone of connecting with your ancestors in order to help them rest in peace. So I call it the memoriam stone. And I thought this was an interesting one for us since we were doing this work in October. And October, like in the tradition of the Days of the Dead, is about connecting with your ancestors, setting up an altar, honoring their memory, giving thanks for all that they brought to you. So I've always worked with Picasso jasper, ever since I started Sage Goddess for sure. Thinking of this as the ancestral connection stone, the memoriam stone. So this is a good one to keep on your altar. We have tumbled pieces of it in spheres and all kinds of forms of this on sagegoddess.com if you liked it. We were able to we had the rough, so we were able to have the other rough carved into some other things and not just the platonic solids. So, but tonight that's what your set is made out of, if you were wondering. Okay, so we'll start with the tetrahedron. Tetrahedron is your triangle. It's your pyramid. It represents the energy body or the energy field in sacred geometry. And it's connected to the element of fire. It also represents balance, stability, change, and transformation. Now, when we work with our pendulum, as I'm telling you all of these correspondences, I want you to think, as we start to work with our pendulum, we're going to ask which one of the bodies we need to work with. And you're going to watch your pendulum say yes or no over each one of the platonic solids. That's also a way to do a reading about which elements you need to work on. Which elements are in balance in my field and which elements are out of balance. So again, once I show you this, you could do this for a client, you could do it for your partner, you could do it for your dog. You call in their energy. I do that by saying their full name out loud 3 times. You can also do a reading for a couple, like to sense what element they need to work on as a duo or a trio. I mean, I'm not judging. I have a lot of friends in open relationships, so whatever works for you. But one way to judge what your relationship needs is to ask which elements are in balance or out of balance in your relationship. And so if you do that, then you'd want to say both people's names out loud 3 times, one partner then the other, one partner then the other, one partner then the other. Does that make sense? So yeah, it's kind of a fun little, I always try to give you techniques and strategies because my expectation is that, I'm sure some of you are here just to learn for yourself, but my expectation is that you're also here to learn how to do readings, how to work with a client, I expect that some of you at least are going to be doing this work with other people. And my assumption too is that a lot of your work right now is virtual. And so this is a perfect virtual reading to do for someone. And then as a crystal healer, what you can do is say, I'll put a custom set together for you for the fire element, or I'll put a custom, you know what I mean? If you work with essential oils, I'll make a custom blend for you for water. Or if you, whatever modality you work with, it'll give you a better sense of how to go in and where you need to focus the energy. The purple for me reads kind of black. I don't think my pieces have any purple in them. If you do see purple though, it would be chalcedony. Yeah, and I'm glad you guys are enjoying that. Yeah, start with your own relationship. Check it before you wreck it. The work always begins at home. You'll be amazed at how accurate it is. Anyway, we'll get there. Are there relationship to chakras? 3,000%, Moonshine Kelly, 3,000%. So this is the fire element, right? So the fire element for me, the tetrahedron, when I think about fire in the body, that for me is usually the sacral chakra and the solar plexus. That's your inner furnace. So for sure, I tend to think about the lower chakras, but in particular, when it comes to the fire element, I think about the sacral chakra. Yeah, it's a great, great question. Okay, next up is the hexahedron. Okay, if you have trouble remembering the names of the sides, what my dad would tell you is, you need to learn them in Greek. XC in Greek means 6. EXI. XC. And some people spell it with an H, but it's silent, right? So XC means 6. And so a hexahedron, just like a hexagon, has 6 sides. So if you count the number of sides on your cube, it has 6 sides, right? Okay. Hexahedron is earth element. For me, and you can, see how you feel with this. For me, the earth element is the root and the sacral. Yeah. This is anchoring you, tethering you. LF3 have probably got a good kick out of that. This is anchoring you, stabilizing your energy, right? Ooh, okay, now Lindsay, I want to see your set. Now I have FOMO, because Lindsay got a mostly purple set. I didn't get that. And you know how I feel about purple. Lauren Conway loves purple too. Her ears probably just perked up. Purple? Did somebody say purple? Yeah. Okay. So the hexahedron is your physical body, where the tetrahedron was your energy body or your energy field. The hexahedron is your physical body. It is, and this will resonate with a lot of you, I think. It reminds you that physical energy must be in contact with nature. Think about grounding, right? Where you physically go out and get your feet on the earth. That's what the hexahedron, I have trouble with not saying hexahedron because I don't say hexi in Greek. So it's like I can't say hexahedron, hexahedron does. Yeah, you guys have to post the pictures in the Crystal Masters Facebook group so I can see it. Yeah, oh totally. Well, I love all the purple stones. I'm a purple addict for sure. Okay, now the hexahedron contains the tetrahedron, just like the Metatron's cube contains all of these, right? Okay, so that is the hexahedron, that's the cube. The next one we're working with is the octahedron. A lot of people think of octahedron as solar plexus. And potentially throat too, because it's air energy. So I tend to place the heart chakra with the isosahedron, and I tend to place the tetrahedron, or octahedron, sorry, with air, and I tend to align that with the solar plexus and the throat. This is the mental body, because this is air element, right? So this is you thinking and overthinking. The tetrahedron was fire, remember? So we aligned that primarily to the sacral chakra, although sometimes fire can also be the solar plexus. Although I tend to see this as more solar plexus, that's right. This is 8-sided. Octo in Greek means 8. Octopus has 8 legs. Octo. So the octahedron is 8-sided. And that makes sense when you see 4, and then you turn it over, 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. Yeah, so Anne-Marie, that's what I was talking about earlier. And I'm going to give you a little... the reason I went into a longer description earlier, if you missed it, you should go back and listen to it later, is I don't want to go back through the whole thing. I think it came out of their psychedelic experiences, Pythagoras and Timaeus, who were studying together and also doing psychedelic substances together. Because the theory is that Pythagoras channeled this. He was shown the symbols in Journey, and he was shown what they represent. Now, some people say that the shapes feel like the element. But I'm going to tell you this, and then you're going to go, Athena, that's a bunch of baloney. And I'm going to tell you, it sounds like baloney, which is why I don't believe it. And I think they were just really blitzed out, and they channeled it. What the theory is that fire is sharp, and so is a tetrahedron. No. I mean, if you were at a lecture somewhere and somebody said that, that's like you get up and walk out. You're like, nope, that's not good. Yeah, so this is the octahedron, and I'm going to show you the bigger size too. 4 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4. You flip it over, 1, 2, 3, 4. So octo in Greek means 8, and this is an 8-sided. This, by the way, is the natural crystal structure of fluorite. If you've ever seen fluorite octahedrons, this is how fluorite grows. I have the pieces behind me, if you were at yesterday's gem sale, of the creedite, and it has actual little fluorite octahedrons growing inside of it. It's the coolest thing. So some of our crystals literally grow in this shape. And so again, that's air element, mental body. I'm gonna head out. I love that. Yeah, and then the cube, again, the hexahedron, was earth element, which for me is earth star and root chakra. That's right. Okay, so the octahedron, air element, the mental body, it reminds you that how you perceive your reality is your reality. How you think, as you think, so you become. That's the medicine of this shape. It leads us to acceptance, compassion, and expression. And that's why, for me, there's a lot of throat chakra energy around the octahedron. And you'll see different things, you know? So if you ever see somebody and they give it a different, alignment, but this by and large is what most people agree on. And what's interesting is everything I'm telling you tonight lines up with all of my plant medicine experiences, all of my actual physical understanding of geometry, everything that I was taught about all of this by my Wiccan teachers. Like, all of the traditions kind of line up and are pretty consistent about everything that I'm teaching you tonight. And that's what I'm trying to give you. I'm trying to give you the common denominator so that you can feel like you've got all the basics on sacred geometry, and then I'm giving you the party bonus of, oh yeah, Pythagoras was high. And we can document that. It's well documented. So, and whatever. I mean, they all were. All of the Egyptian pharaohs were smoking blue lotus, you know what I mean? Which is psychotropic. I mean, every culture has had the Chinese had opium, and, in Central and South America, they've had their plant medicines forever, ever, ever. So it's, every one of the ancient civilizations had hallucinogenics, which is the only way you can explain how much sacred geometry is in architecture. The flower of life is in ancient Hindu temples. How? You know what I mean? And it's precise. So I give you that. So the octahedron, again, is air element, solar plexus, and throat. The dodecahedron, dodeka in Greek means 12, is a 12-sided shape where all of the faces are pentagons. Penta in Greek is 5. So a pentagon is 5-sided, and a dodecahedron is 12-sided for 5 and 12. Pretty cool, right? Okay. The dodecahedron is for spirit. So again, the pyramid is fire, the cube is earth, the octahedron is air. This is the element of spirit, or ether is how they refer to it in Wicca. Element of ether. It's really true, Danielle Newman. And I think it is the reason that we have such pandemics of depression and anxiety in our culture that the ancients didn't have. It's really fascinating. Rates of suicide were much lower in ancient times. The lifespan was much shorter, but we didn't have people just rushing to press the eject button like we do today. And I think it's because psychedelics are very helpful for anxiety and depression, and really helping you recenter on your life's purpose so you become re-inspired, and people don't have access to them. So then they're like, I don't know why I'm here, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, I feel like this isn't anything like I want it to be, and then they eject. So I think if we had better access to plant medicine, we'd be a healthier society, but it'd be very hard to convince people in our modern time that that's true. Okay, spirit, ether, this is consciousness. This is your conscious body. It reminds you of where you came from and where you're going. It helps you access deeper mystery and meditation. That is what this shape does. And so then, of course, because each one kind of eats the one before it, so the cube contains the pyramid, the octahedron contains the cube and the pyramid, the dodecahedron contains the octahedron, the hexahedron, and the tetrahedron. Does that make sense? So each one comes along and it eats the other ones. It's true. It's true. Yeah, and there has to be a reason, though. I mean, I've also looked at it and thought, what are we supposed to learn as this iteration of humanity without plants? You know what I mean? Like, what was the big learning? And I think maybe it's to learn how to become our own source of peace and inspiration and wisdom. But it's what an odd pathway to get there. Okay, the last shape, the last technical one of the Platonic solids is the icosahedron. Some people call it the icosahedron. And this is a 20-sided shape, and all of the faces are triangles. So 20 triangles, 12 pentagons. That's the difference between the dodecahedron and the icosahedron. So this is the icosahedron. In your set, it looks like this. This is just for those of us who need readers, which would include me. I can see this pretty well, though. Is that helpful? All right, tell me where you're lost, and I will back up the truck and explain again. I'm very patient, and I really do want to make sure it's clear. So if at any point I've lost you, just let me know, and I'll go back and walk through it one more time. Okay, the icosahedron is 20-sided. This is your emotional body. This is the element of water. So this is the heart chakra. The dodecahedron that we just talked about. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. This is spirit, or ether, which is third eye and crown, and soul star too. Yeah, Athena size. We have these in the shop, actually. In a couple different, we had them in lepidolite, aventurine, and quartz, I think, over the years. I don't have any more of them, but okay. So I'm gonna review. Is that okay? The only ones we haven't talked about yet are Merkaba and Sphere, and I'll come back to those in just a second. But we've talked about the basic 5. So I'm gonna review one more time. That's right. So each one represents an element. This is the first one we did. This is the tetrahedron, also known as a pyramid. It's the fire element. For me, this is primarily sacral chakra. Okay, tetrahedron, 4-sided, right? Tessera is 4 in Greek. Balance, stability, your energy body and your energy field reminds you of the need for change and transformation. The second shape we did, hexahedron, 6-sided, earth element, root and earth star chakra. Okay. This is your physical body, and it reminds you that the physical body must at all times be connected to nature. It reminds you to ground. It's the need for connection and reconnection. So this is stability. And if you think about it, like, Most tables, most chairs have 4 legs. We consider that foundation. You think about the tarot, right? Because remember, all of these esoteric principles and modalities are all linked, right? In the tarot, what are the 4s about? They're always about foundations, right? Setting up a firm and solid foundation, whether it's the pentacles or the cups or the swords. So it's the same thing with the cube, right? The 4 edges of the cube are thought to create a solid, firm foundation, and that connects you to the earth element. The next one we did was the octahedron. Octo in Greek is 8. It's got 4 sides and then 4 sides. You can also remember that fluorite grows octahedrally, right? And so this is naturally what a fluorite crystal looks like growing out of the ground. This is your mental body. For me, this connects to the solar plexus and the throat chakra. This is about acceptance, compassion, and expression. It governs what and how you think. Which even lines up with the metaphysical properties of fluorite, which, are all about discovering your path, connecting to your most authentic self. It's so interesting to me how all the correspondences really do line up when you look at it that way, I'm so glad you're here. And those of you who are just coming in, don't worry. This is recorded. Alexis takes notes. So if you had to come in a few minutes late for any reason, just dive right in and enjoy, and everything will be taken care of for you so that you don't have to worry about anything. So I don't want you to stress out. Okay. If we have time, Casey, we'll get there. If not, I'll pick it up in another class. He wants to talk about the Pythagorean pyramid. Probably more psychedelic experiences. The next one we did was the dodecahedron. That is the 12-sided polygon, and each one of the sides is a pentagon, 5-sided. This is consciousness, your conscious body. This is connected to your third eye and crown chakras, soul star chakra as well. Yep. This is mystery and meditation, where we come from, where we're going back to. So Lindsay says, whoa, you're right, the shapes do activate according to what chakra they're aligned to. Finally felt grounding from the cube. Interesting, isn't it? And then when we do our exercise in just a minute, Lindsay, I think you're also going to see it visually with the pendulum. So you'll finally start to connect energetically to it that way too. And then the 5th of the platonic solids is the isosahedron. This is a 20-sided polygon where all of the sides are triangles. Brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? Because tetrahedron was the first shape. This is the emotional body, water element, heart chakra. Yeah. Heidi, it's interesting. Any of the tarot correspondences that I've come up with, I've made them up. I've never actually heard anybody connect sacred geometry technically to the tarot system. So I would turn the question back to you and see what you think. You know what I mean? I will tell you, remember, the suits in the tarot align to the elements, right? The swords are air, the wands are fire, the pentacles are earth, and the cups are water. So I think you can see a correspondence there between the suits and these shapes and what they represent. And that's how I teach tarot, because the way I teach tarot is I teach the major arcana, and then I teach the suits, and I teach what the numbers represent. Because if you know what the suit is and you know what the number is, you know what the card is. You don't actually have to memorize all the pictures. It's kind of like the honey badger way of learning tarot. But they are all connected. And then, and go back to your Rider-Waite. After tonight's class, if you're interested in this stuff, go back to your Rider-Waite deck and look. You'll see how the correspondences line up. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, it's all connected. And that's what I love about what I do. And my passion with Sage Goddess has always been to try and draw a straight line between Christian practices and Hindu practices and indigenous practices and Greek mythology and Roman mythology and sacred geometry, because ultimately at the end of it what you learn is there's one source of information. but there's 1,000 iterations and manifestations and translations. But there's one source. So if that's true, which I fundamentally believe in this universe, there is one source of all wisdom and information. The differences are just translation. They're not actually a difference in the substance, the material, or the content. They're the difference in how the beholder has chosen to translate or allocate or design. Does that make sense? So I think if there's any confusion in any kind of magic, it's because humans have intervened and made a mess. You know what I mean? I don't think it's because the creator wasn't organized. Now, the only two shapes we did not talk about in the context of the Platonic solids, and that's because Pythagoras didn't talk about them. Pythagoras didn't line these up as neatly to the elements. So the Merkaba and the sphere do not have elemental correspondences. Now, the way I was taught is they are both all elements. Earth, air, fire, water, ether. In Wicca, they're considered all. The all. Because the Merkaba, if those of you who were here at the beginning saw that video, if you missed the beginning of class, the only thing you missed, and it's not a big deal, but watch it later, or pull it up on YouTube for yourself. We'll post the link for you in the group if you don't want to go back to the beginning. But the whole point of that video was to show you the Merkaba and how it subsumes or holds all of the other Platonic solids, right? It's true. Everything was a human invention, Rena. Everything in our reality is our effort to interpret the unspeakable. Everything. Our notion of God or goddess, our notion of magic, our notion of even the way we think about sacred geometry could be fundamentally flawed. It's filtered through a very human consciousness, which we can't even fathom this universe. It would literally, and this is what I've received so many times from Medicine Journey, you wouldn't be able to live this human life if you knew. It would make it impossible for you to do this day in, day out, if you knew. It would be impossible. You'd be like, I'm not going to just work a job to get a check to live in a house when I could inhabit the entire cosmos. It would be really hard to be human, which is why the universe keeps us kind of small and tight and gives us a very limited field of vision, because if you, it would blow your mind. It's hard to come back here and do this thing as a human, because you start going, it doesn't need to be this hard. I don't need to be in conflict. I don't have to be unhealthy. You know what I mean? It's just hard. Anyway, so the Merkaba is said to be the light body. Because remember, Merkaba in ancient Egyptian means light spirit body. And the sphere is said to be the universal body. Everything, the cosmos, you, me, everything subsumed in one form. Remember that the sphere too is also the point of creation. One of the reasons I had a really profound journey, I don't think I've ever really told you about this one before. I was thinking about it today, though. It was one of my first journeys I ever had. And because every time I have a journey, I ask a big question, and then I wait to see how they answer it. And the big question was, show me what God is. Show me what creator is. Show me what source is in the universe. I want to see it. And I ended up getting something I really didn't think I was going to get. And I was a little disappointed, to be honest. But it makes sense in the context of this. And so I asked to show where God was in the creation of the multiverse, right? And what I was shown was a pinpoint. Does that make sense to you? It later made sense to me, but I was like, oh. If you ever watch how the seed of life is drawn, and then how the seed of life becomes the flower of life, right? Like how it goes from one design to the next, and builds out. What I was shown in the journey is God is, or creator, whatever you want to call it, whatever you call it, is the first point. Those shapes can't be drawn without a point. So God is literally, but in the journey I was like, what? I want to know what God is. And literally what I was shown in the journey was, that's what God is. Interesting, right? The first spark. The one who put the pen on the paper. And that's right, the 0 point, the source point. The bija, the seed. That's exactly right. It's beautiful, right? Profound. Enough to piss you off. I will tell you something though, if you're new to journeying and how spirit communicates, that's exactly how spirit communicates. There's never spirit isn't trying to put on a show. So you ask a simple question, you're going to get a really simple answer. So the actual question of what is God is actually probably the simplest question I could have asked. And there's such a simple way of communicating that to me. Okay. So light body, universal body. The point of creation. So in a way, and this is how I think about it, so if it works for you, the alpha, the omega. The one point, the single source point of creation, the absolute integration of every form of symbolic magic. The alpha, the omega. So here's what a Merkaba looks like. Again, more Athena-sized. Some of you have this one. So when it sits flat, but it's meant to be dimensional because it spins. This is how our spirits used to move between dimensions. Yeah, they're like bookends, BK. What a great way of saying it. That's exactly right. So this is the Merkaba. So from that point of creation comes every other form of magnificence in this universe. But it has to have an initiation, right? Okay, so I'm going to go back to my setup here. I'm going to do the exercise with the smaller pieces because it's actually much easier, which is why I'm glad you have a travel set of tools, because I consider this kind of a travel set. Can you guys see that okay? Yeah, you can. Okay. So I'm going to lay them out. I'm going to use a ring. I'm going to take one of my rings off and use it as a sphere stand because I don't want this little dude to roll all over. I know. Okay, so I'm going to put the sphere on this side. Okay, so that's the A, the alpha, and this is the omega. I'm going to put this at the end. And then I'm going to lay these out in order from tetrahedron to hexahedron. And we actually really don't need to have the sphere and the Merkaba in for this exercise because we're doing an elemental analysis. So I would focus, if I were you, on fire, earth, air, and then we go to water. Let's even take the dodecahedron out so that we're not focusing on spirit, okay? So that we can do a 4 elemental analysis. And I want you to put enough distance between them so that you can accurately see your pendulum swinging without, assuming there's interference from the other elements. Let's see. Karen's getting hungry. I love it. That's how I know I'm doing my job, Karen. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to tell you is there are a couple of exercises you can do. First of all, if you want to anchor in the energies of one of the elements, you can use a double terminated wand over your tools. Some people like to actually make contact with the point of the shape to call it in. So you can imagine almost like if you were filling up a bottle, right? You'd fill up the double terminated point with that energy, and then you can send and receive it. Because remember, quartz is instantly programmed. Quartz just receives. It's like an energetic sponge. So, and you can do the same thing with earth energy. So if you're feeling very ungrounded, you can come home, put your hexahedron down, close your eyes, call your energy into present time, channel that, pull that energy into the wand, and then send, receive. And you can really feel it. You can pull it into your heart, you can pull it into your solar plexus. Okay, so Cynthia, I've got my pyramid, right? The tetrahedron. Then I have my cube, my hexahedron. Then I have my octahedron, my 8-sided, looks like the little fluorite, right? And then the last one we have for water is the icosahedron, which is the one with all the little triangles all over it, not the one with the pentagons. Okay. I don't have the capacity to zoom, is the only thing. And I feel bad because the pieces are the same color as my tray. Sorry. I should have put a different color tray down, but we're going to do what we do with what we got and be good with it. Okay. So what you're going to do first is you're going to ask your pendulum if it's able to read the energy. So I ask, are you able to read this energy as fire? Okay, and that's a yes. And then I go to the cube, are you able to read this energy as earth? And that's a yes. And then I go to the octahedron, are you able to read this energy as air? And it says yes. And then now I'm going to the icosahedron. Are you able to read this energy as water? That's true. Okay, so now I'm going to bring the pendulum back. And now we're going to do the assessment. You could always do this in a different way. If you're doing for someone long distance, you're doing it on their behalf. So you're asking your pendulum, and you would do the same thing. This part that I just did would be the same whether it was for you or for a client long distance, which is, can the pendulum read the elemental energies? If it says no, you can try testing it on another stone and then coming back and asking it again. Sometimes it just has to attune to the frequency. Did it answer to your voice? Isn't energy awesome, Annette? It's like when I talk to my Alexa in the kitchen and I'm live, other people's Alexas turn on. Big yes on water. Okay, now we're going to begin I'm going to do an assessment for myself. I want you to assess yourself. It's good to begin with you. So, and there's different ways to ask this question, but the fundamental question you want to ask is my fire element energy balanced? And watch what it says. And then we can talk about what to do if it's imbalanced. Because remember, the goal of all healing is balance. Not too much fire, not too little fire. All right, so my fire is balanced. How's your fire? Some of you will have imbalanced fire. Yeah. Okay, cool. I love it that you guys have your pendulums you love. Okay, let's move to earth. Is my earth energy balanced? Am I grounded enough? It says yes. Interesting. So Tasha says no. Judith says no. And by the way, it's neither here nor there. If you're imbalanced, it's just information, right? It's not like, oh, well, my earth is balanced, so I get an A. You know what I mean? It's not like that. Okay, so we'll talk about imbalance in a minute. Let's just get the diagnosis here. So now let's go to air. Is my air element energy balanced? It says yes. I think that's true. I don't have... air element imbalances look like overthinking or indulging in too much fantasizing. Can be anxiety is another manifestation of an air element imbalance, right? Okay, yeah, so Heidi, if you're ahead of me, then you can try spirit. If you want. And you have two different metrics for spirit. Remember, you have, technically the best one is the dodecahedron, but you also have your Merkaba. The dodecahedron is going to tell you about your state of consciousness, and the Merkaba is going to tell you about the state of light. So it's awareness versus light, okay? This one is Lilith. My Lilith embodiment. It's the one I've been wearing every day because it's very grounding to me. Maybe that's why my earth element is balanced. Okay, I'm going to get close to my water so I can get a good read here. Is my water element energy balanced? Oh, I knew this was coming. Because it's not. I saw this one coming. And then you can double check it. So let's just do a quick run through again. Fire, earth, air, water, oh, it's like, nope. Here we go. So I'm not balanced in water. So what I'm going to do, it's almost like gambling. I'm going to leave that dice and take the other ones away. And now I'm going to check the level of light in my system and my level of consciousness. Okay? So is my consciousness balanced? Yes. And that would be masculine, feminine. Would be an example of where you might have a conscious imbalance. And then, is my light balanced? And it says yes. That's shadow work. Skeletons in your energetic closet. Maybe too much shadow, maybe not enough shadow. So this is masculine, feminine, any form of duality in your consciousness, and this is the level of light. Hard swing yes for water, I love it. Okay, so now you know, so these are all balanced too. And then I'm going to check my overall balance. Now, in my experience, when I do this, if any of them have been out of balance, sometimes this final one will just be out of balance because one of them is off. But it's saying I do have universal balance. And so then I'm going to do one more check on water. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, no matter how you play it. So I am imbalanced in water. Ta-da! So Lauren's light is out of balance, right? Anybody else? Only water's not balanced. So Deanna, France, and I are in the same shoebox today. Julia got circles on fire. So do you know what that means for your pendulum? Does it mean it wants you to ask again, or does it mean ask later? So light is out of balance for Linda, which is okay. It just means think about where you might need to either do more shadow work, or maybe you're doing too much shadow work. So you got to kind of bring it back more to a light balance. And if you're all out of balance, that's okay too. If it goes too much in circles and you don't have a clear understanding of what that means for your pendulum, what I would do is ask it again in a few minutes. The sphere is universal energy, right? So it's a general read of your balance. And sometimes if you have, 3 or 4 of the other bodies out of balance, then it'll just by definition say you're not balanced, right? Just water for left 3 at 2. Lori has several out of balance. Okay, so if everything is balanced, then our work here is done, everyone. It shouldn't affect the reading. I don't think so, Joan. As long as you are able to get it to sing for you, I don't think you have anything to worry about. Mine is on my personal pendulum, the cord says kind of like this. They didn't set it straight in the thing, so it goes slightly this way. But it's my favorite pendulum. The Merkaba is light, and the sphere is universal energy. Okay. So let's talk about how to bring balance elementally. Sound tools are some of the best tools to use. I'm going to show you something that we don't have in the shop right now. Other people sell them. We're going to have ours back in stock in a couple of weeks, but just so you know that these are one tool that I use to bring balance back. So my water is out of balance. So I work with my chimes, and there are 4 elemental chimes, and that's why there's 4 elemental chimes. Each one brings a frequency or a vibration. There are herbs and oils that align to each one of the elements that can also be worked with for energetic balance too. I love it. If you're in balance, you're in good shape. Now, if you're out of balance, then we want to talk about crystals too. Since this is a crystal healing class, I think it would be good to talk about some basic crystals to work with for each one of these energy centers that's out of balance for you. And so I'm just going to share with you my favorites by element. And I probably should just grab my tray while we're here, just so that I can actually show you what these stones look like in real time. And I don't think we have a lot of them in stock, so this is not like a, hey, go get this stone. And you probably have some stones in your collection that you may even prefer more than the ones I'm going to show you. Okay? I love that, Karen. Okay, so what I would do if you're going to do this regularly for yourself, for clients, etc., is I would dedicate a stone to each one of the shapes in your set of 7. So with the tetrahedron, for example, for fire, carnelian, one of my favorite fire element stones to work with. I also love to work with fire agate, which I don't think I have on here. I also love to work with spessartine garnet. All of the orange garnets, hessonite garnet, spessartine garnet are really good for fire energy too. Fire opals of all kinds are actually really good for fire energy. So what I would do is choose a crystal in your collection and keep it with the set of 7. So that if you're reading for somebody and they're out of balance, you can send them the stone. Or you can make them a care package. Or you, if you're reading for you, you can just start carrying the stone with you. And each day, maybe at the end of the day, it depends, maybe you want to do it at the beginning, then check it again. And keep checking, because it'll tell you whether what you're doing is working. So that's one thing to do. Again, if water's out of balance, what that means ultimately, and it's what it means for me too, is I'm working through some grief, and I'm working through some real sadness about this year, candidly, in my own life. I think I'm faring pretty well, but it has been really stressful and difficult, and it's brought up challenges that I just never anticipated. And there are some days where I've been really sad about this year. Now I'm resilient and I'm fiery and I know it'll be okay and all of that, but that's what's going on with that water element being out of balance. I mean, I'm not like a crying type person, but I've had my share of tears over the last, 7 or 8 months since this all started. So anyway, usually if you see yourself being out of balance, you'll know what's going on. Just like I knew immediately. I'm like, yep, there we go. Might be doing too much shadow work would be why your light might not be balanced, Angelia. That's exactly right. Could be other things too. But that's usually what it is. It's like maybe you've been too focused on shadow work, or too focused on the subconscious, or too grounded, or too, you know what I mean, and you need to lift up and sort of do more of the light work to balance it out. Sunstone would be great, Kaylee. I like that a lot for fire. I really do. That's another great suggestion. And then next up in the order of operations is earth, right? So for earthing, I love almandine garnet. I also would love to see you working with any of your red jaspers, including your brecciated jasper. I really like red aventurine for earth too. I love working also with stones like, I think bloodstone is a very earthy stone. I think tree agate is a very earthy stone. Looks like that. Druids love working with tree agate too. So that's just some of them. And so if you're looking at your if you're looking at your imbalance, what I want you to do tonight, and I'm happy for you to do this in the Facebook group too, because then I can give you some feedback, but you don't have to share it if you don't want to, is, and petrified wood, 1000%, Casey, by the way, brilliant suggestion. I want you to journal as if I've given you that for homework. What about my fill in the blank is out of balance? What about my emotions? What about my physical body? What about my, mental body is out of balance? What about my light is out of balance? And write it down. Just let the words come, almost just free writing. Don't worry about sentences or punctuation or paragraphs or anything. Just start letting it out. And ask yourself to be honest. You know what I mean? Like, really give yourself the space to say it. You'll start getting some answers to that question that might actually surprise you, right? Yeah, and so that's why I always check it twice, by the way, Savvy in the Kitchen, because if you get a reading that you're not sure, you're like, I don't know that makes sense for me, run it a second time. Yeah, we'll work on that too for you, Angel. Right? Okay, and then the next one up is octahedron, which is the air element, mental body. I really think for me it's so much because it includes communication. So for me, this is solar plexus and throat. So solar plexus chakras, chakra stones I really like. I love yellow jasper and citrine. I also love yellow fluorite, and most forms of amber fall into that category too. For the throat chakra, amazonite, which looks like this, turquoise, which any of the aqua auras, and also aquamarine is one of my favorite throat chakra stones. It's such an emotional purifier. And I also work with this one when I have water imbalances like I do right now, because it's such a healer of the emotions. Not so much the heart, but the feelings. Right? Let's see. Yeah, Maddie says, what if the answer is that I just want to float away from the things I don't want to do? I think a lot of us have been in that boat for a while. It's okay to go through periods where you just want to pull the covers up or float away. And actually, sometimes going through your life with a little bit of that floating energy is the best thing you can do. I do a guided meditation sometimes with people. I used to do it more when I did one-on-one work, where I would have them actually, I did it for Soul Shift 2 months ago or 3 months ago. When did I do the floating in the river audio for you guys? Where I actually had you visualize floating in a river where the universe is the river and it's just holding you. And so you don't have to struggle or work hard or prove anything. It was just this exercise of relaxing and letting go and imagining everything that you're worried about, like just kind of floating by you. Like, oh, look, all my problems are just floating away. And it's one of the best, most relaxing meditations. So for me, there are times where just floating or just feeling like it's okay to just float is the medicine. Don't you think? Yeah. Okay. So we talked about throat and solar plexus. Then we have the dodecahedron, which is spirit, which is third eye, crown, and soul star. So there you're going to look more at stones like sapphire. For me, is one of the most important stones for the spirit element. Amethyst is always good. Purple agate is good. Really dark blue kyanite is really good too. Sodalite will be up there. Sugilite. Purple fluorite would be fantastic. And then you get into your morganites for your soul star chakra, your selenites. There's a lot of different stones at those upper chakras that are very effective for this. Aw. That is so wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Kimberly Wilson. I look forward to seeing you too. I really do. Yeah, I really, really do. Yeah, sapphire is an important one for your collection. You got to find one that you really connect with. I wear sapphire every day because I'm a teacher, and it's the teaching stone. So it helps you remember what you want to communicate, and it helps you express it effectively and have good mastery of your words. So yeah, you can totally do relationship inquiry. Remember, all you do. Let me finish this one thing, and then let me come back to the relationship question so we can talk about that. Scolasite too, for sure. Annette, at those upper chakras is really good. The isosahedron is the water element, right? We talked about that, and that's heart chakra. So at the heart chakra, the stones that I like to work with, chrysoprase, I like to work with rhodochrosite and rhodonite, especially if somebody has heartbreak or trauma. I also like to work with manganocalcite at the heart chakra. Prasiolite's a nice one too for heart chakra work. It's a good physical heart healer. Prehnite, for sure, is another one I like to work with there. Pink opals are always nice if you can find them. And rose quartz, no doubt about it, is a fantastic one. Yeah, the one on my thumb is a star sapphire that my jeweler friend who made these tourmaline rings, he made that. So sapphire is an important one. Stilbite too, I would say, for the upper chakras would be really good as well. Totally. Yeah, so the air element stones, again, are going to be solar plexus and throat. So that's going to be your citrine, yellow jasper, your young ambers that are kind of like more of the golden ambers are going to fit in there too. And let's see, tiger's eye would fit there. Brucite would fit there too, which is really good for empowerment. And then at the throat chakra, you'll want to be working with your aqua aura, your larimar. Tanzanite's another really good one for the spirit element too, by the way. And then also at the throat, amazonite, turquoise are good ones too. I love larimar for the throat chakra, but sometimes it's hard to find. We're working with amazonite in Soul Shift next month around expression as we work on our talking pieces. Yeah, if you're a teacher, you need sapphire. Even just a teeny one. You know, both of my sapphires are very small. This one, I have a friend who's a jeweler, a family friend, and so he gave that to my son to give to me for Christmas a couple of years ago. So people are always like, "How did your 10-year-old son buy you a sapphire necklace?" But my jeweler friend helped him afford it. So anyway, that one I wear every day because it's from my son, and he picked that out himself. And then I have my little star sapphire from my friend. Yeah. So so if water is off, heart chakra work is one way to address it. The other ways are with sound, because there's frequencies, right? And we've talked about the solfeggio frequencies here. So there's different frequencies that can be worked with to align these. You can start to work with more of that element in nature. So going out to water, going to the ocean, going to the river. If your earth is out of balance, spending more time in nature, working with soil, gardening, literally connecting with the earth, right? So there are crystals you can work with, herbs you can work with, oils you can work with, and then also practices and frequencies and toning and all of that. So kind of the options are limitless. And what I hope I'm inspiring you to do is really totally customize this. Those of you who are artists, and quite a few of you are, I am not, okay? It's not my gift in the world. Not painting and drawing and stuff, but some of you are incredible artists. Can you imagine if you did this work for a client and then you did an intuitive painting for them around their element? Like, oh my God, I don't know anybody who does that. That would be a completely unique service in the world. And each one of you has arts that you do. Do you know what I mean? So I want you to take this information tonight and then think, okay, so how could I, with what I do, create, love, have, how could I bring this forward for someone if I was going to do a healing session? Mantras, of course, are powerful too. I taught you the fingers, remember, in January or February in this class. So you can go back to that class too, or if you joined afterward, you can always go back and buy that class, because I taught you all the finger correspondences by the elements too, so you can do different mudras to call in those energies too. Let's see. I think the harmonics are synergistic, Danielle, to answer your question. And I think it's different for different people. So, when I think about water, for me, I think about heart chakra, but I also think about root. Because a lot of times grief is also feeling ungrounded, right? When you feel steady and safe, you tend not to feel such intense grief. So I think that's a really smart idea. And you can grid to balance it 3,000%. And then what I would ask is, if you're open to it, share what you're doing. I find it so inspiring personally, especially as your teacher, to hear what you're doing and see what you're doing and how you take this and completely personalize it and make it your own, because tonight is like a leaping off point, right? And then from here, where you take it is limitless, and it can be something, again, that's so unique to you. Some of you make malas. Can you imagine making a mala? So your client gets a healing session with you and then they get a mala. I don't know. Sounds good to me. Again, it's not something I'm going to do, but why don't you do it? Okay. So I'm going to show you how this works for a client really quickly, and then our class will be complete for tonight. Did you guys enjoy this class? I hope so. I hope it's up there with one of your favorites. I was really excited to bring this information to you, and to also not just share information, but give you kind of a practical set of exercises and tips that you can use, and something that you can use every single day as an assessment for yourself that I think is pretty accurate, actually. So, okay. Yeah, I'm ready to market you. You tell me what you do, I'll go, There's always someone in the world who needs what you do. That I know for sure. I'm always going to be your cheerleader going, go, do it. What are you going to do? Great, do it. Go, what are you waiting for? Boom. Okay, so here's how you do it for a client, okay? So let's say, I'm just picking one of you at random. Janine Gibbons, okay? Hi, Janine. If I was reading for you, Janine, and you weren't here, I would say your name out loud 3 times. So I would say Janine Gibbons, Janine Gibbons, Janine Gibbons. And usually what I do is I wait for the pendulum to say yes, which tells me, okay, it's connected to Janine Gibbons' energy. And then I do the exact same exercise I went through with you, right? Just checking each one. I'm not giving it enough time to actually read you, Janine, although I saw something out of balance down there. And then if you want to do a couple, so let's say Janine Gibbons was with Jason Gibbons. Just making that up. Saying something. I would say Janine Gibbons, Jason Gibbons, Janine Gibbons, Jason Gibbons, Janine Gibbons, Jason Gibbons. And then I would wait for it to say yes, and then I would go through. Keep in mind, if you're out of balance, your partnership is probably somehow out of balance in the same element. Because partners' energies are bound. I'm glad you guys liked the class. Thank you for being here too. Partners' energies are bound. You know that, right? So it's called entanglement. And this is quantum mechanics too, which is why I'm telling you, my passion is to teach you that there's some of the things that we talk about in metaphysics are actually scientific. So, and the longer you partner with someone, the more entangled you become on the particle level. So that's why people even start to look more like each other over time. Their particles are so entangled that it's almost like they're the same person. So that's why entanglement is physical, but it's also energetic. So it usually means if one partner has a blockage, the other partner's apt to have the same blockage. Yeah. So let's see. I'm so glad you enjoyed the class. It was a pleasure to have you here. I'm just saying if there's any other questions I can answer for you. The technical things, Alexis is really good about helping with like accessing classroom stuff and things like that. So I usually leave that to her. I'm really glad this was helpful for you. So I think the most important thing you could do after tonight is, first of all, figure out how you activate this, right? I don't think we have any more of the platonic solids, unfortunately. But Alexis, will you check with the team to see if they have any more coming for us? I don't know if they do, but no, I don't think you look like Rock yet. And he might start to look more like you over time. I married Lauren to her husband a couple of years ago. Suggestions for the Merkaba in the sphere, in what way? Let me know more what you're asking for there. It sure is. Everything in your environment is entangled with you. You're imprinting on everything around you. And if I could pull away 3D and 4D, I'd be able to show you what that looks like. You have a web of energy around you. It's about 12 inches. And it's sticky, okay? So if I'm here and you're here, as soon as we're within 24 inches of each other, we are now, your energetic fingerprint and mine have now merged. And when we pull apart from each other, even if we only entangle for a few minutes, there's a slight difference now in both of our energy fields. I've seen this. So it's a very interesting phenomenon. Oh, crystals for the light. I guess we didn't really talk about that. Crystals for the light to me are selenite, dambarite. I think of this Synergy 12 as being really powerful light-bringing crystals. And crystals of the shadow for me are going to be the obsidians, the jets, the onyx, the black tourmalines, and isurines. When you think about the visible light spectrum, do you remember I was talking about this? The color waves, Roy G. Biv, right? And then once you get past, you get behind Roy, it's ultra red, and you get above the V in Biv, and it's ultraviolet, right? And so that's how color magic works. Each one of those colors has a frequency. And the lower you get on the invisible light spectrum, the slower the frequency. And so that's why you have more grounding energy in those lower frequency, darker stones. The higher you get on that visible light spectrum, the higher, tighter frequency you have, and that's why you have a higher spin on those crystals from the violet through the clear part of the visible light spectrum. So Andrea, that's where, so there is a little bit of this. Is a great question from Andrea Rodriguez, who said, how do I know if I need to work my light or my shadow? That's where your discernment comes in. Now you can start asking more micro questions of your pendulum, more yes/no questions to try to get at that. Do I need to work my light? Do I need to work my shadow? Does my partner need to work his or her light or their light? Does my partner need to work his, her, their shadow? Does that make sense? So you can start to break it down into more micro yes/no questions, and then just run the pendulum on those questions. Is that helpful? Okay, cool. That's exactly right. Salt baths are really good, especially if your light shadow balance is off or your water balance is off. That's another powerful way to work with that too. Yeah, I always call names 3 times. That's just how I was taught. The more you say names, the more resonance you create. One of the reasons I use people's names a lot, I don't know if you've noticed, but I like to say your name. I like to say my name. I like to say names, because names call your energy into this space. As a teacher, if you say your students' names frequently, they commit to their learning. I always wanted to, when I was a researcher, I wanted to do a study about this and actually try to document it, that students learn better in an environment where the teacher says their name consistently, because it's like your name has such a powerful connection to your frequency that every time you hear it, it connects you. You know what I mean? Like even for you. So it's Yeah. I'm so glad. I'm really glad you guys enjoyed the class. I enjoyed having you here. And then the balance piece, Melanie, is the other place where that is your discernment. What you're going to have to do to bring that into balance could be different for everybody. So what I do is I try it all. Do you know what I mean? So for me, for my water balance, I'm going to try to physically hydrate more, spend more time near the ocean. I'm going to try to take more salt baths, even though I already take one every day, and I have for a decade. Salt baths are very important energetically for purification. And I work with a lot of different people, so it's how I get the energy off at the end of the day. And then I'll probably be upping my work with aquamarine and some heart chakra crystals, upping my work with rose essential oil and some others that are really good for the heart chakra. And then I'll just keep testing, you know what I mean, and see if it's working. If it's not working, then we try something else. Might need to do more of this, where I connect with the wand and then send receive, which is another way of running the energy. So, thanks you guys. Yeah, can you visually see the shape for water? You sure can. It's this one right here. Move all my stuff so I can get closer to you. This is the icosahedron, which is the water element shape. It's the one that's 20-sided with all of the triangles across the face. And that's your water element stone. And yours looks the same. It's just easier for me to show you with a big one. That's right. All right, so let's continue the dialogue in our Facebook group. Would love to see you posting and sharing, if you're open to it, how you're going to personalize this, what your balance was like. If you're journaling and you want some feedback from me and Alexis, I would love to mirror back to you and share my thoughts on what you saw too. So you're always welcome to continue the conversation there if you'd like. I have other good news for you. Friday, I hope you're excited, I'm doing a new moon edition of live readings for you guys, right here with my reading tray. So I will be with you from 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific time on the new moon to help you finalize your intentions for this month. And then I'll be with everybody. That's just for you guys in Crystal Masters. Then on Friday at 6 p.m., I'll be on YouTube Live with everybody for the new moon ceremony. So we get 2 hours together this week, which I think is kind of nice. I'm looking forward to seeing you again on Friday. You are very welcome. And please do. I would love to see, Kaz, I would love to see your garden. And I really appreciate that, BK. I know you've been around a long time, so thank you for those very kind words. When the veterans say it was a great class, I take that to heart. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So have a great rest of your evening, everybody. Thank you, Alexis, for being here as always. Session 2 of October is complete. Don't forget, if you are interested in the Hasselnite garnet, it's there, and it wasn't there this morning, so that's why I mentioned it to you tonight. It came into the building late this afternoon, and they got it right up on the website, so if that's interesting to you, it's there. And otherwise, I will see you on Friday at 3 p.m. for live readings. Have a great rest of your evening, and a beautiful Thursday, too. We'll see you soon.